Every brand knows their bestseller, but do you know what customers buy after that? What about the second purchase or the third purchase? Most brands have no idea, and that gap is costing them. Hey everyone, I'm Andrew. I'm the co-founder of Cleverific.
Hi, I'm Josh Stratton. I'm the head of growth in merchant strategy. Been working with some of the biggest brands in retail, CPG, and e-commerce for the last 5 years.
Awesome. Let's dive into it.
We've done like 5 PRO reports this week. We've seen a lot of product journey analyses for different brands across multiple verticals. What are some like highlights that you are taking away from those like so far?
Yeah, I think the brands that tend to do the best in what we've seen here have product lineups. Their product managers have figured out a product lineup that gets customers coming back. And whether it's to buy more of the same product, so we do see first and second follow-up purchases be, in a lot of cases, more of the same product that they bought the first time. That definitely happens quite a bit. But the most successful ones tend to have products that will tie in and kind of spider across more of their product catalog there. Maybe if you bought one shirt, that you're going to follow up and buy maybe another shirt with a collar or a different color, and then a pair of pants in the follow-up purchases there. Basically, a strong set of related products that can incentivize your customers to come back and maybe fill out their wardrobe, or that they need this additional accessory or would like this additional accessory.
Absolutely. I think what's interesting too is like we're talking about the second purchase, but what about the third one? What about the fourth one? How do you map that? If I'm talking to a brand for the first time and I ask them like, what are your top 5 products? They're going to know it.
Right.
But if I ask them for each one of those products, what's the top product that sells next, right? If a customer comes back to buy again, the answer is usually, I don't know. And then if I ask again, okay, well, what about like one more purchase down the road? The people who come back a third time, right? What did they buy? How do you map that effectively? And like, how do you put together, because it's one thing to have the data, right? And it's important. And most brands don't have that data. But then the question becomes, what do you do with it?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're talking about, hey, what are our top products? Very easy report to run in Shopify, right? You go in the Shopify reporting session, just run that, set your time frame. It's going to tell you. That's only a first level, like the very surface of the customer buying experience and their interaction and their journey with your brand. When you're talking about the second, third, fourth level of repeat purchases there, that's really giving you an image of, hey, how does our brand perform over time with this customer, and how sticky are we? Really, how good is our product catalog, right? How good is our product lineup? So what we've done here is we pull down all of your data as far as your sales are concerned, and we developed a funnel diagram, because essentially anything that's multiple steps is a funnel. And so we look at that and we're able to develop a map that goes from level 1, 2 to 3 to 4 about what customers are buying at each step in their repeat purchase journey. What's really interesting about that is that you can see patterns of behavior of not just, hey, what are the most popular products, but what's the most popular product to buy the first time for a customer? And then what's the most popular product to buy the second time for a repeat purchase, and then a third purchase? And it's really interesting behavior that then you could take and map into the type of offers that you're sending to your customer, how you're marketing to your customers, how you're messaging, also potentially how you might retarget them in the future. What we're also seeing here, and I think this is something that's really unique to how we look at the data and how we understand how customers behave, is that depending on what you're doing during that month, customers have a different retention pattern and a retention story. And we're able to take a look at that and say, all right, what's your product journey for that customer if you acquired them in February? And how does that differ from a customer that you acquired in March or April? Because you might have been doing something different there. Maybe you had a different product launch. Maybe you had different messaging that you were trying out. And this allows you to really understand what your cohort behavior is for your retention over time.
One takeaway from me that I've noticed when we're looking at these product journeys is obviously the biggest drop off is between the first and the second purchase. But then once a customer purchases like a second time, they're much more likely to purchase a third. And if they purchase a third time, they're more likely to purchase a fourth. That's why it's so important during that second purchase. It's not just about the one additional purchase. It's about establishing buying habits and cementing customer behavior with your brand.
Right, exactly. And cementing how that customer thinks about your brand. Maybe they have one piece from you, whatever that might be. You know, if we're talking in the fashion and apparel world there, then maybe they have one piece with you. But as soon as they have 2 or 3 pieces with you, now they're, the Levi's person. They're a Viore person. They were going to much more likely to think about you and filling out their wardrobe on that side of things the fourth and fifth times even compared to just the first time.
Yeah, and the more items from a brand that a person wears consistently, the more likely it is that their friends are going to ask, "Hey, where'd you get that?" Right? I like that. Brand presence isn't just about that first point of conversion, right? It's about establishing yourself like within the identity of the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh, in our conversations with merchants over the past week or so, do you have an example of a product journey that surprised a merchant that really stuck out with you?
I think what kind of sticks out to me is how different it'll be from brand to brand. Actually, every brand has a different way that they are approaching their business, and every brand has like a different way of like kind of measuring what success looks like in terms of a product journey. For example, like for fashion brands, they're most likely interested in getting kind of a spider web pattern, like a sprawl of products. They want customers to keep coming back and buying stuff that is essentially new stuff, right? And for other brands, there it's all about replenishables. They're selling something that is going to run out, and they want customers to buy those products, those same products essentially again, and they want them to subscribe. So it really just depends. And I think that's kind of what stood out to me the most is at the end of the day, everybody wants the same thing in the sense as they want customers to come back. But
Uh-huh,
what coming back looks like is going to be a little different
uh-huh.
from brand to brand. And that's why I think having a framework that works for kind of across the board is so important. But what matters, what's important is having the right data to understand what your customers are already doing and making those offers to customers proactively in a way that removes as much friction as possible.
Absolutely, Josh. And what's been really interesting about looking at this very specific data, which is this customer product journey and what their repeat purchases are and what they are actually even buying in those repeat purchases, is that some companies might have a very limited product catalog. They will have maybe a set of products. I'm thinking of this one particular personal care brand that we're working with. They're somewhere around a $50 million a year company. They have maybe a handful of products at most. And how many of those products are you possibly going to need in a year or let alone 2 years? However, what we're seeing there is that there's opportunities for customers to actually, a lot of customer behavior is buying a second, maybe a backup version of that product. Understanding that that's what customers are potentially doing gives you an opportunity as a brand to go and position a follow up offer that way for that customer. And then for other brands, we looked at one or two other brands where we took a look at the data. And I think this is one of the powers of actually really understanding the data there is understanding when we can help a brand and when we think that they have a different opportunity that they should go after first instead. And so I don't know if you recall at least one or two of these brands earlier in the week here, but I do recall a brand that we looked at and they had some potentially good product tie-ins as far as their product journey is concerned with repeat purchases. However, their conversion rate overall for their site was low and they also didn't have a whole lot of volume there. When we see something like that, we look at them and say, hey, look, you're not at the right stage for PRO. You should be working on increasing your overall volume of customers and then also increasing your conversion rate of customers. And the conversion rate goes both ways. In general, in e-commerce, you're looking at overall, somebody goes to your site that you have around a 3 to 4% conversion rate. To a naive approach, you might think higher is better. We did look at a brand who had, I think, an 8% conversion rate on their site.
Yeah.
Another brand
Can
that
we shout out Jolly Commerce because they rock
had,
real quick anyway.
yeah,
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 Jolly Commerce. Anyway.
that's amazing there. And they also do, they were just a very, very great execution on that. And so
Mhm.
that's what's possible on the conversion side there. They are doing that across a lot of volume. So they really figured something out there. Right. But if you're a merchant and you have low volume but high conversion, what that means to me is that you're not driving enough volume. Period. If you're not driving enough volume, if you have low number of customers during the year and basically not that much order volume, and you're somehow driving 8% conversion rates there, that means you're actually just not driving enough volume. You've got to get more customers in the door there. On the flip side, if you have tons of customers and you're not converting at 3 to 4%, then you're not doing a good job on the site side there. That's where your classic CRO, conversion rate optimization work, comes in to get you to that 3 to 4%.
Absolutely. One thing that's kind of like struck me a little bit too is technically like when we do a PRO report for brands, technically all that data is data they could go find themselves in Shopify. So why aren't brands looking at it?
Yeah, I think brands do to some extent. And there's something about the ease of looking it up as well that really makes a difference and having it there for you. I think in addition, one of the hard things about some of the data that we grab is you've got to still slice and dice what Shopify gives you in order to get to some of the insights that you're really after. The way I think about Shopify's data is that they really have a lot of raw data. That raw data needs to be combined in, specific ways in order to understand a particular part of the story for questions that you want to answer there. And you do have to know what those questions are that you want to answer when you're looking at data. You can't depend on the data to just, to scan a bunch of numbers and graphs and think that you can develop a narrative there. You have to approach it with a question. And you have to approach it with questions where you have an open mind on that, because as we know with data, there are lies, there are damned lies, and then there are statistics. Being open-minded to the data, and especially being open-minded to being wrong about what your initial assumptions are, is probably the most important thing that you want to bring to the table when you're looking at data. Our takeaway from merchants is that if you're a brand and you're doing at least $5 to $7 million a year, you should be looking at your product journey data. The product journey data is already in your store. You may just not be looking at it or know how to get to it. Once you see the path, you can start engineering it instead of hoping customers figure it out for themselves. If you want to see your product journey, you can get a complimentary PRO audit at Cleverific.com. If you like what you heard here today and you want to hear more, please comment and subscribe for more. We'll see you guys next time.